What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game, often playing out subconsciously, both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. Guys, real quick before we begin, just want to ask you a quick favor. If you can, please stop what you're doing and leave a review for the podcast. Whatever platform you're listening in on, if you can give us a 5-star or whatever the highest rating is, it would be fantastic. And even better, if you found it useful in any way, please write that down on a very brief review if that's possible. It makes such a difference to how the podcast is received out there and pushed out on various platforms. That's all, nothing else to ask. Now let's get on with the show. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. And today's one is quite different insofar as I have a guest who came to my office after 3 years of producing this podcast. And we are now into season 4, as you know. This is the very first time I've had a guest in person with me here in the office. So instead of watching these Zoom calls or listening to these Zoom calls, today I have my second mic set up and we had a great conversation. Now, before I get into introducing my guest, I very quickly want to mention that I will be in the next sort of 7 to 10 days releasing a new training program. And this is going to be the very basics. It's going to be fundamentals. And so it is for people who are at the very start of their career, beginners. And so I'm offering an early bird package to anyone who signs up nice and early. And so I just want to mark your card so that you're aware to be on the lookout for this. And if this sounds like something that is definitely going to be of interest, then please do let me know now by social media, message, DM, email, whatever, just that I'm definitely interested. And that way I can send you a link to that early bird offer. Just want to mark your card. Not pushing this on anybody, but just I do know that there's quite a lot of people listening in that ask me questions about this kind of thing. So finally, it is about to be released. Now, speaking about my first guest, Owen Reilly. Owen Reilly is an estate agent and he's been in business now 15 years. And I've used Owen before. He sold my property in probably the lowest point in the market here in Dublin. And what's particularly interesting in this conversation is we talk about innovation in estate agency, and Owen I consider to be a bit of a trailblazer in this field, because it was about 5 years ago he brought in the first virtual reality house tour, and in addition to that he has introduced his own bidding software on his website. And so transparency is another thing that is important to a lot of people, and this is something that Owen has sort of started. But where I think he's really blazing a trail is on TikTok. And TikTok is an area, those of you who follow me on TikTok, you'll be aware that you can get great engagement in TikTok. And what Owen has told me is what started out as an experiment for him, same thing that happened to me, has turned into genuine leads for his business. And he has sold a property that first became aware, that the buyer became aware of it on TikTok. So if you had said that a couple of years ago, people would have laughed you out of it. So we also talk about the market and some of Owen's advice on buying a property. And so I think you're going to get value no matter what part of the market you're in. I think you're going to get some great value from this. So without further ado, my conversation with Owen Reilly. Owen Reilly, welcome to the Behind the Facade podcast. And what's really interesting about this, it's the novelty of it. This podcast has been going 3 years, and you were the first in-person guest I have actually had to interview. And so welcome to my office.
Well, I'm delighted to be here and honoured I'm the first in-house guest.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You're an estate agent, and probably a lot of people are going to recognize your name from social media. You do a lot of stuff, particularly on TikTok, I see, and you're getting your great views and stuff like that. But for people in the international audience who are not, aware of you and stuff like that, why don't you just give us a brief description of who you are and what you do?
So I'm a career estate agent. I have my own business, Owen Reilly. We specialise in residential sales, lettings and management, very much focused on the city centre, the Docklands and the suburbs. I think we would say we're very focused on kind of the middle and the upper end of the market, simply because, you know, the margins are better. And we're kind of physically in those areas. We have a lot of expertise in those areas. I started the business in January 2008, and I can't believe how much time has flown by.
15 years.
Yeah, exactly. And before that, I worked in a couple of the larger firms around town.
Like, the first question that pops into my mind, January 2008, did you find yourself starting because you had just been laid off? Because at the time it was a difficult market, if I can remember. Would that be accurate? Or was it that you decided, I want to start my own firm, and then the whole market kind of imploded?
You know, it's a good question, and I can see why you're asking it. No is the answer, but had I not gone out on my own, I think within 6 to 12 months I would have been let go.
Really interesting.
Yeah, because
wow.
I was, at the time I was specialising in new homes, actually.
Right, okay, yeah. And they fell off a cliff then.
They did, yeah. And it's funny, I noticed it, and I'm not suggesting now I saw a crash coming or anything like that, but there was a large development out in Adamstown in West Dublin.
I remember when it was being built.
Yeah, and it was actually Dublin's first kind of planned town, or SDZ, Strategic Development Zone, and it was planned for 6 or 7 years. The developer was Castlethorne, really professional outfit. So the first launch there, Adamstown Castle, we sold 330 units in a weekend.
Wow.
And and the only way I could describe it, it was insane. The level of demand, the amount of sales we've had. And in phase 2 of Adamstown Castle.
And what length of time between them?
You're talking about, I'd say, about several months.
Okay.
So you're talking from the autumn of 2006 into the spring of 2007. And at the second phase, I think we had like half a dozen sales.
Wow.
And we'd a fraction, like less than 10% of the visitors. And it was kind of very tangible evidence that the market was turning. And then I had bought an apartment off the plans in Grand Canal Dock in 2005. And I moved into it in 2006. And I just started thinking, I kind of loved that part of town. You'd Google and all these large tech companies and law firms and other firms. And it seemed obvious this was going to be the new central business district. And then just in the summer of 2007, I just thought, you know what, someone should specialize in this part of town, and it just came together like very quickly. So just in the space of a couple of weeks, I said, I think I'll go out on my own. I think I'll focus on Docklands initially. And then a to rent sign went up on a unit at Grand Canal Dock, and it just kind of
snowballed.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is go back, turn the clock back to young Owen. Is, you know, he's left school, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. Tell us a little bit, if you can, what, you know, at that journey, just because a lot of people are wondering, like, what brings you into property, you know?
Yeah, so I'm from County Meath, and I'm a tillage farmer's son.
Okay.
And I'm the eldest of 5. I have 4 younger sisters. So there was a lot of pressure on me. My father was a well-known tillage man, potato man, grain man. If you're drinking a pint of Guinness or you're eating a pack of Tayto crisps, the chances are he grew it.
Right.
And but like a lot of farmers and developers and self-employed business people, he's a bit of a dictator. And so I decided kind of when around 16 that farming wasn't going to be for me. And I remember that summer I decided to work in Chadwick's instead of on the farm, and didn't go down very well. But I couldn't get paid, couldn't get paid. So I then went to college and realized very quickly I was in the wrong course. And my father told me, look, I'm not funding this. You're either taking this seriously or you're not. So I dropped out of college, and within a month, a well-known and respected auctioneer in Navan called Michael Gavigan was put it out that he was looking for an apprentice, and the Gavigans and the Reillys go back quite a bit. So I met with Michael. I didn't know much about the job, and basically went in there on the ground floor. Very old school apprenticeship. You don't see them now. I was basically doing a bit of everything, including cleaning the windows and
Okay,
stuff
wow.
like that. It was a really good, like Michael is, he's from a long line of auctioneers, and he was a fantastic guy to learn the business of, but not just the business of being an auctioneer, just how to conduct oneself as a professional,
Yeah.
which I didn't have any idea about.
Yeah. Well, and still a lot of people don't know that kind of stuff these days. I mean, that's a really interesting story. And to go from that to owning your own firm, what's the time frame involved?
That would have been, I'd say, 8 years.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah. I mean,
to go from apprentice to owning your own firm in 8 years is a pretty rapid ascent. Yeah,
I suppose it is. After I left Gavigan's and joined Guns.
Okay.
And Gun Residential, and Guns at the time was a powerhouse, and
I can remember they had the Ballsbridge office and all that stuff.
And they were obviously they were so strong on the commercial side. Fintan Gunn, God bless him, died as a young man. Pat took it over as a young man, and just did an unbelievable job of making it a market leader, and eventually it became CBRE. CB and Richard Ellis were merging worldwide, and
I can remember.
HOK were the hot favourite to trade under that banner, and Pat and his team, and Pat put a brilliant team in place. People like Willie Dowling and Ronan Webster, and really turned it into a powerhouse. Residential was a little different, but still really strong.
I remember there was a guy called Shane Daly, and Shane Daly did some stuff for me back then.
I worked with Shane. So eventually, Shane obviously was strong in New Homes. So Gun at the time were running a full page ad in the Sunday Indo. I remember going up to the office in Ballsbridge for the interview, and there's like 4 or 5 other people interviewing for the job in the lobby. So I went in, put my best foot forward, and I got a junior negotiator role in Lucan.
Okay, Lucan.
In West Dublin. So I worked for 2 senior agents there. It was a fantastic place to work. Lucan at the time was a high volume office. Like for example, I was there 2.5 years. There was 1 3-bed semi we sold 3 times during that time.
Jeez, in 2.5 years?
Yeah, so people were literally buying a house, and in some cases moving 6 months later into a 4-bed around the corner. The market was performing very strong. There was a lot of people were building up equity really fast. So it was a high volume office. It was a really good place to learn the business. Eventually then I became a negotiator there. It's certainly where I learned to be able to manage a high volume of sales. So I remember at one stage I think I was selling 26 homes.
Jeez.
On my own
simultaneously.
So you'd be out 6 days a week. So from there I went to Rockgar, the Rockgar branch, did well there. Then I went to Ballsbridge, did well there, and then I was looking for a change, and Gunn started a new homes business in a joint venture with CBRE. So I went in there then as a sales manager around 2005, I'd say, and then within a year I became a director there, and we were with Shane Daly, and we were working on some very high volume schemes both in Ireland and overseas. And it was an incredible time for the property market. It was the height of the Celtic
Tell
Tiger.
me about it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was just and again, just working in that office, CBRE were in there as well. So they sold Ballsbridge to Sean Dunn. Liam Carroll was a client, so he was building thousands of units.
I can remember, this is like, because I was in the middle of I was a young man about town, and I was buying things and like flipping them for double the money and stuff like that. Like it was an absolutely crazy time, and that's one of the reasons why the market collapsed, is because it was so crazy. It was like I remember the property that I bought that you sold for me. I bought that 100% debt. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I ended up in trouble in that particular case, is because the banker this mortgage needs to get paid, Gavin. What's the story? And so it went back in the market, and you sold it for me, but I think I took a big haircut on that one. And
yeah, like gosh, timing is everything, isn't it? But it was an incredible time, and just talking about finance, getting 100%. When you look at how difficult raising
today
any kind of property investment, development finance, you know more about that than me, but it's very challenging. And you're mainly talking private equity, really. But it was an incredible time. I remember once we were working with a developer on a scheme down in Waterford, I think it was, and the developer was engaged with Bank of Ireland, and Bank of Ireland had made a commitment to come down a week later to look at the scheme, and so the second call they made was to Anglo on a Monday morning, and Monday afternoon they cancelled the Bank of Ireland meeting because Anglo had already agreed to bank the whole thing.
Sounds incredible. Yeah. I mean, I can remember it was like that. One of the first kind of development deals that I did, I didn't know anyone in Anglo, but my business partner who I was doing the deal with, he knew one of the lads in there. And so I went to his house and we sat in his living room and we said, we want to buy this property, on the road here, and it's about 2 million. And he said, Gavin's going to go 50-50 with me. And the guy said, okay, you go on out for just a minute, give me a moment with Gavin. And he says, all right, Gavin, I'm going to lend you $1 million and this is what we're going to do. And it was just in the space of sitting in that living room in my friend's house, the deal was done. And the next day we sent the solicitor in and he bought the property at auction. And to think what you would be doing today, like the hoops that you have to jump through and stuff. And that's why I say to people who are kind of asking me for advice and stuff is don't compare what we were doing back then with today. Like there's not even the remotest similarities between the way the markets exist,
Yeah, and they're two extremes. I think we need a happy medium.
I think you're right. It's gone from one spectrum to the very other side. Yeah. Moving into your first year of business, was that a struggle? I mean, you were right in the middle of it all.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I resigned from Guns end of 2007, set up shop January 2008. So I had an office, I had a window display, no properties to put in it. I had a website, no properties to put in that either, and just basically went out pounding streets, leaflet drops. I remember my first valuation. It was a lovely gentleman with an apartment off Marion Square who got my flyer, and he said, "So what else are you selling at the moment?" And I said, "Nothing. I've just set up last week." So in fairness, he gave me a shot at selling it.
He must have taken pity on you.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, I can't send this guy.
But it didn't sell because it was obvious that a downturn was coming. No one knew how bad it was going to get, but there was just fear. And I had. Because I'd been working in new homes, I decided I was going to specialise in new homes as well. So I ended up taking on a lot of new home developments, both in Dublin and outside Dublin, where nothing was happening. But you still have to service these clients and service these schemes, and you have to bring in a team to do that. So initially for the first few weeks it was just myself in the office, and then I had someone come in to support me a little bit. But initially I was thinking I'm not going to do rentals at all. I've never done rentals, and then very quickly within a few months said no, I need to do rentals because I need to get some fees in.
And it's so interesting. I mean, what would you say the biggest challenge was for you when you started that first year?
I would say it was a combination of cash flow. I think I lost 80 grand year one.
Wow. Okay.
I'd made the decision from the off that if I was doing it the way I wanted to do
properly.
it. I wanted an office. I wanted a proper website. I wanted to focus on branding, and of course you want to build relationships. So even though it was a really tough market, you're looking for business. You're looking to build relationships, and you've got to try.
But you have to, I can understand completely, because I'm thinking you can't bring a new client that you've just won into this kind of, I'm working from home this week. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, maybe you could do that today after the pandemic.
Yeah, I think you could do it today.
But at the time, you would be judged immediately by the office.
Absolutely, and I think, and it just gives comfort to people. But I think what was a really good move was physically being in Grand Canal Dock.
Yeah,
because I was the only agent down there, and I think that, and I lived in the neighborhood. My business was now in the neighborhood, and I think when you're small starting out, you need a niche, or you need some expertise that no one else has, and that was very much mine at the time, and I built that up over time by starting doing reports on the Docklands market as well. So Docklands to this day is still very important to me, but it was everything back then. But I think the initial challenges were, who are you and how long are you trading, and big competitors, and definitely cash flow.
Yeah.
And I made so many mistakes on that, and And probably another mistake was, there was some properties I was trying to sell for months and months, and it was just obvious that nothing was going to happen, and just maybe
cut your losses.
Cut your loss and being a bit more ruthless with your time,
Looking at 2008, obviously there was about a 5-year period of like almost nothing happening really, except for distressed sales. Fast forward then, say 5 years, when this market started to turn. At that stage, you've built yourself a 5-year. You've been in business for 5 years, so you're about to ride the wave. I mean, describe what it was like once the market had started to turn. Do you remember like a date when you said things are starting to happen?
Yes, December 2012. The guys who bought the Marker Hotel inked the deal, and I was advising them on the block of 84 apartments adjoining. And when that deal actually happened, I was like, this is the floor. It was the first big deal certainly I was involved in.
Right.
And I was starting to see, really from the spring of 2012, some investors were starting to react to, I guess, the value on offer, the yields on offer. Like in prime areas of Dublin, you were getting, in some cases, 10% rental yields. I think today our average rental yield today is about 5.8 in quarter one this year. So investors starting to react to that. But for me, kind of celebrating the closing of that deal, December 2012, that felt to me that was the floor. And really from the first quarter of 2013, activity in terms of deals actually being done started to really pick up.
Yeah, and then by that stage you had spent 5 years building up your business, so now actually you're ready to rip, and so it's really interesting. What would you say are some of the, first of all, the mindset, the habits, the behaviors, like in terms of your success now, in business 15 years, is there anything that you would sort of say, I would say that is probably one of the areas that I'm pretty good at, that has managed to allow me to grow the business?
Well, I guess I never forget the responsibility and trust that someone has given me, and I would say this to younger colleagues all the time. Even just someone giving you the keys to their home, which you're going to be in when they're not there. Like you probably won't do it with your best friend. So understanding that it's a very serious business. I think I've always been really focused on marketing. I've always been focused on new platforms and new ways of connecting with potential buyers and tenants. I think reporting on the market has really benefited my business, and then all the other things that the good agents do, really super focus on service and really good communication, and ultimately on your results. And just taking the long-term view when it comes to building relationships. And what I mean by that is sometimes someone might be giving you a one-bedroom rental somewhere. But as you develop a relationship, it's amazing what else
comes out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. And in terms of, well, let's say looking at some of some of the bigger clients, like the developer clients and stuff, you're working with quite a few these days and stuff. And I'm just curious, do you see any patterns or common traits in the successful ones that you sort of say, that's what makes these people so successful?
I would say they're extremely optimistic by nature. They look at risks in different ways. And I think how they broach that, I think, is really what sets them apart. So say from a developer, from even myself, the kind of risk that they're willing to take on. There's the obvious things like the vision, and I think they've amazing project management skills. I think that gets overlooked all the time. Like the different inputs, the different people involved, whether it's the planning, the finance, the contractors, the agents, the other professionals like the architects. And just like they're amazing project managers. I think that gets overlooked.
It's that's actually one of the biggest things, is that you're basically the conductor of the orchestra. Yeah. And you're just there trying to like manage all the moving parts.
But a lot of people are not equipped to deal. So they might have the vision, they might have the guts, but it's the project management skills. And really, I would say from two things really. Number one, the project management skills, and then the people management skills, or bringing in the right people.
Yeah.
And I think
leadership skills.
Exactly. But I think the project management skills that the top guys, developers have, I should say, is exceptional.
The next question I have for you, Owen, is you've been now in business for 15 years, and you're one of the few people that I know that is doing TikTok and things like this. So how would you describe the transformation of, say, real estate agency over the last 15 years compared to you starting your business in 2008? You needed to have an office compared to where we are today.
Well, I think social media is obviously a huge one. You know, there was no Facebook. At least I'm not sure if there was.
2008, it was only really universities.
Okay. So, but the you know, I started TikTok really as an experiment during a lockdown, during a COVID lockdown, and I would follow a lot of the real estate agents in America, and I saw that more and more of them were talking about it. So as an experiment, I started to do some posts on TikTok, sometimes about the properties and sometimes just small little snippets, and was amazed at the engagement. But what's really changed since then is it's now a very effective tool. So if you take the tech ecosystem in Dublin, which is huge, like all the professionals in that sector all have a TikTok account.
Yeah.
So if you're working in Meta or Google or wherever, they all have TikTok accounts now. So I think that so the engagement is amazing. Initially it was an experiment, and to maybe engage and start building some kind of a relationship with younger people. But now it's actually front and center in our marketing strategy, because I recently sold a home in off the South Circular Road in Portobello for well over $1 million. And the buyer said to me that she was working in tech, was in California at the time, but she was obviously looking at properties because the algorithm followed her, and she first saw the house on TikTok.
Wow.
So it's effective as well.
Super effective, yeah.
And then you've got virtual tours. So we started using virtual tours about 7 years ago. And that's
Were you one of the first to do that?
Definitely one of the first, yeah. Probably not the first, but one of the first. And and instead of getting third parties to do it, I actually bought the camera off Matterport. Okay, and we've got a few of those now, and all my team are trained to do it. And that's been a game changer, because it gives that immersive experience, and you can reach any buyer anywhere in the world. And that's a big, dealing with international buyers is a big part of my business. And quite often they're not able to physically come here. And in some cases they feel the virtual tour means they don't. They might have a family member here who will view on their behalf, particularly if it's for a child in college or whatever. And they save a lot of time as well, because people can do the VO tour and kind of know very quickly, is this what they're looking for or not.
Yeah.
And one of the most inefficient parts of being an agent is, you drive somewhere on a Saturday morning for half an hour, you open the door, the viewer walks in, and they know straight away, no, this is not what I'm looking for. But funnily enough, I would have said VO tours was going to finish video, but I was very wrong on that.
Yeah.
And video gets huge engagement. And again, my colleagues and I are very attuned to that. And nothing gets more engagement actually than video, we're finding.
It's incredible. I mean, my kids, I have a load of kids, obviously, and my teenagers at the time, this is back when TikTok was called Musical.ly. And I can remember they opened an account. They were all doing this dancing to music and stuff. And I wanted to know what they're doing, because I didn't like the idea that, some guy could be kind of like, stalking them or something like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to open an account and stuff. And I can remember one evening, I made a video of myself walking around East Point. And I kind of it was actually a video that I was sending to a group that I was in, and it was kind of, Gavin, introduce yourself to the group. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do this. And then I thought to myself, I'll have a laugh. I'll just upload my video that I did for this private group, and I'll just upload it to TikTok and see what happens. So I did it just before kind of like going to bed, and next morning I had it's just crazy. I had 160 new LinkedIn requests overnight, and I was like, what's going on with LinkedIn? And then I went into Instagram, and I had about 500 Instagram link requests, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And I went, and last thing I thought was to open TikTok. Opened TikTok, and the video had 58,000 views overnight.
Wow.
And there was 2,200 new followers, and like about 500 comments. And what was really interesting was half of them were negative. Half of them were super positive, like guys wanting to come and work for me, And then the other half were guys calling me an asshole and like, this is not LinkedIn, get off and all this. And I was just there like, oh my God, like, and all the years I've been trying so hard to kind of like, kind of build up a social media profile on Instagram and stuff. And in one night, TikTok did it.
The engagement is incredible, and you're absolutely right. The engagement is not all positive, and I will get a lot of negative comments.
You have to develop a thick skin.
You do, yeah. Now you need that in this business anyway. But I think the algorithm and how they designed in the video is just very addictive.
It is, and it's the fact is it just knows what you want to see, that you don't even know you want to see it. Do you know what I mean? You'd be flicking through and you're like, oh, how did it know that I'd actually find this interesting?
And that's why it's so effective. And genuinely, it is producing strong leads for me now. It's not just, as I said, it started out an experiment, and as you say, a bit of a laugh, but it's very, very effective.
Well, it's like, obviously we all follow Gary Vaynerchuk, and like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V as he's called, I can remember him saying that musically at the time, TikTok, he says, the kids will all be on it. But I said, it's the people who get in early, they'll have like 60,000, 100,000 sort of followers before anyone else starts to kind of think about doing it. And it's so true. It's like everyone suddenly, adults now, grown-ups, have TikTok accounts, but only in the last couple of, year or two. But it's those people who are early birds and get in very, very early. They're the ones that can kind of capitalize. On that topic, Ryan Serhant, I'd love to hear your view, because I kind of think about what you're doing here in Dublin as being the kind of the Ryan Serhant, obviously watered down version.
Yeah, that's a very nice compliment.
It's funny because I'd be flicking through my TikTok and it'll be Owen Reilly going through a house in Dublin, and then next it'll be Ryan Serhant like walking around the 100th floor of some apartment overlooking Central Park. And so it is like it's in that space.
Well, he's brilliant, isn't he?
He is. He's a natural.
He has some big advantages. He's trained as an actor. He looks great.
Tall and handsome, yeah.
Tall and handsome guy, full of confidence. He's in a fantastic market. You've great New York. You've great product. You've great skylines. If you're in a less desirable location, it's definitely more challenging. There's a friend of mine. He's an estate agent in Longford, and he's just finding it really hard to get engagement on TikTok. But he's a pioneer. He's taking on big incumbents who are there a long time, and fair play to him. And he's I can tell you what he's done starting his own brokerage. He's made a huge investment. Just really, really admire him.
I have to say, I admire the guy. It used to be when he was on that show, New York, whatever, $1 Million Listing, I used to hate the guy. I was thinking like, what a brash kind of like, he was a bit narcissistic and all that kind of stuff. But in his new role as the kind of the head of his company and all that kind of stuff, he's doing it in a way that seems to make sense. And so it's interesting. Your clientele, obviously, we've been covering the fact that, young people looking to move into the Docklands area or people who work in tech, clearly your clientele are going to over-index in that kind of social media space. In terms of other things that have happened in a state agency, like, is there any other area that has like completely radically shifted?
Well, not enough. I mean, I think the structure of firms, and even if you look at some of the top people or partners and directors in some of the larger firms, the same people there that was there 20 years ago when I came into the business. In America, what's really kind of changed there is the teams side of it. Yeah. And I think that's interesting because right now, if you're a successful agent, you've got a few options. One is put in your 20 years and hopefully become a director or a partner. Or option two is you go out on your own and you take all the risks that come with that. And I think we need something else. A bit like the American model where you develop your own client base and you bring in your own business and you just want to focus on that. Like, as you know, having your own business, if you could just focus on what you're good at, like if I could just focus on bringing in business and doing deals all day, I first of all, I'd love it. And that's what I'm really good at. But of course, running the business, there's the whole back end of things that people can't see. And I think that I would like to think that my firm will be able to support agents like that who have the experience, have the client base, have the ambition, but just want to focus on doing deals and bringing in people. The other thing then is the bidding process. I think for many years, the most negative part of the whole process, or for many buyers, was the bidding process and how that was managed and how the lack of transparency, I suppose. So managing that now digitally, we designed our own bidding platform about 5 years ago. And that's really just been a game changer, because there's no ambiguity over what was bid and when it was bid, and nor should there be.
Yeah, I mean, BidX1 obviously set the kind of stage, didn't they? And the whole idea that you can just see it there, and you place your bid, and as long as you're able to kind of close the deal, it's yours. You know?
Yeah, and they're very much pioneers as well in what they're doing, and they're all over the world now at this stage, and fair play to them. So I think improving the buying experience by improving or making the bidding process more transparent is a really good thing. And of course, the big thing from when I first came into the industry is the licensing, and that's definitely. It's definitely made the industry more professional. It has come with unintended consequences, because there was a period of time there was a lack of licensed people, particularly in property management, actually. But overall, it's a good thing. And I think, as you mentioned there, Gavin, I've never seen more interest from young people, thanks to programs like $1 Million Listing and Selling Sunset. One thing I try and make them understand is the whole license issue, and you do literally have to come in and learn the trade and study as well in order to get the license. But my training was more than 3 years. There can be a lack of patience, I find, with some of the younger people now. They literally want to come in and
start making money right
start
away.
Doing TikToks and selling penthouses.
Yeah. Well, I suppose everybody has these kind of like inflated views of how easy it's going to be. Let's get into the market, because the market is something that everybody is focused on at the moment. And you've got you put out a report and things like that. Tell us, what are the latest findings? If there's any highlights of the latest findings that you want to kind of just talk about, first of all.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the market has been remarkably resilient from a seller's perspective. Now, it is underpinned by a severe lack of supply, which is just not reacting to the time of year. In January, I would have said this year felt like it could go one way or the other, given rising interest rates and one impact that's had in America and the UK and Sweden. I don't know if you watched it.
Yeah, I know about it.
Kind of different underlying fundamentals, but the market has been remarkably resilient. I do think if there was a normal supply of homes for sale, it would be different. I think if we didn't have such a dysfunctional rental market, there are literally first-time buyers who will do anything to get out of renting because of the lack of supply, the lack of quality, the high cost. All of this harks back to what we were saying earlier, to the financial crash.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I've done multiple podcasts on the housing crisis, and I've explained that this all began in 2008. Like, when the crash came, half the construction industry was I say decimated, but it's actually 50% of jobs were lost. All those people went away. We went from 90,000 units a year to 10,000 units a year. And now we're at 30,000 units a year, and we need 60,000 just to stabilize the market. And I don't think it's possible because who's going to build the extra 30,000 a year? Like, there's nowhere for the people to live if you were to bring 30,000 laborers into the market tomorrow.
Exactly. And I think, I think we have to face it. The systems to deliver homes is broken, particularly planning, obviously. Finance now is going to be increasingly a problem, and what worries me now is that we've got rising construction costs and rising interest rates at the same time. And it's actually amazing. We built 30,000 new homes last year. Are we going to build 30,000 this year? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a good question, all right, because, I mean, the way I was explaining it in one of my podcasts was that you've got the supply, there's completely undersupply, demand off the scales because it's pent up. People are trying to rent, people can't rent, so they want to buy. They can also, interest rates were lower at the time, so it made a big economic sense for you to jump in and buy rather than rent. Now, all of a sudden, you got affordability creeping into the equation. And so whilst the supply-demand tension is going to be there forever, the question is, can you actually afford because if your mortgage has gone from where it was, say 2 years ago to where it is today, there's going to be quite a difference there. And so the question is, obviously, ECB, where's the market going with the European Central Bank? Are they going to keep on lobbing on? I can't see it myself, because Spain and Italy are the kind of the next Greece, so to speak, if we have a big problem there, you know, with debt and things like that. So from my perspective, anytime I look at the market, I kind of think to myself, dysfunctional as it is, this is what we have, and this is the way it's going to continue to be.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I was home at the weekend and my father was asking me about how is the market doing, and I said, well, it's doing remarkably well despite all the uncertainty. And he said, just a matter of interest, when was there no uncertainty? I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. So now, as always, different property types and different locations at different price ranges are performing very differently. Definitely a little bit of froth has come off the top end of the market. Now, if you're pricing accurately, you will still sell very well. But definitely houses at that end of the market, kind of the 2 million plus market, some of those houses today are selling less than they were a year ago. Where the first time buyer is active, up to about €450,000, in my experience, is very strong, like extremely strong. And interestingly, we all know about the flight of landlords from the market, which has accelerated in recent weeks. 85% of our sellers in March were landlords exiting the market.
85%.
85%. Now, I do sell a lot of apartments, and some of those landlords were waiting since last autumn to get vacant possession. But interestingly, in recent weeks, we've seen a big pickup in demand from investors. And there are people with large cash deposits who are deciding to invest in real estate who don't fancy the stock market right now. And it's not so. A few weeks ago, we were wondering about the banks for a very brief period of time. So it's a great store of wealth, I think, is what these people are doing, and they'll get some return on it. They might even use it themselves. But if interest rates keep going up, though, all bets are off then, because the market can only take so much of that. And I think, I would hope you're right that they are close to as high as they're going to bring interest rates. But I think central bankers would never admit it publicly. But I mean, if they thought increases brought about a fall in property prices, they would say that's a good thing. That's one of the goals we're trying to achieve here.
I mean, the amount of people that kind of predict, you get all these kind of head the balls that are kind of putting comments in on social media, like that the government are doing this on purpose because they want to keep, you know, the housing high and stuff. I'm saying, like, talk about the most negative thing in terms of the political system. Like, that's the one thing that they're all beating each other over the head about. And so everybody wants to get house prices down. There's no way. How would you think we could fix? I mean, you've got the banking system, you've got the planning system. There's so many hurdles to kind of speeding up the system. What would you say is a solution?
Well, what's extremely frustrating is we're talking about the same barriers today we were talking about 5 years ago.
That's
and we just seem to be in this loop, whether it's planning, finance, infrastructure. What's really worrying right now is that all of a sudden, some of these funds that we thought were putting down long-term roots here,
again, starting to pull out.
And what's definitely obvious is that a German investment fund will accept a yield of between 2 and 3% in Berlin. They won't do that in Dublin. They want at least 4, 5, 6% now, maybe. And what's really concerning in the build to rent sector is it's frozen.
I've seen that. I've spoken about that.
Yeah.
The fact that there's a lot of schemes that would have started the planning system. They would have gone through all of this time in planning to come to a point where now we can go out to the market and we can speak to the big funds and stuff. And all those deals now are basically off the chart. I would say there's no chance those deals getting done, because whatever price you paid for the site, forget it. You're not going to get a profit on your construction, your site price that you paid on the assumption that you were going to sell it at a yield of such and such. Those yields are now off. So I think there's going to be a lot of schemes that just cannot be financed, and they'll just be shelved.
But is this where the state steps in? I mean, you know, one thing I was thinking about, and you know this, Gavin, one thing that's always people are just incredulous about is developer profits, okay? Without understanding the risk and, you know, the variables and what way it can go.
Swing, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm wondering, is there a way that we could activate these schemes that maybe the risk is removed, but and in return the profits are capped? I don't know. Like, developers need to make a profit.
I think, I mean, like, at the end of the day, if somebody has got a hole in their pocket because they've got this little piece of land and they can't get rid of it, and they can't make an economic case to go and sell it, and your banks won't accept that, then you go to the to state and you say, well, you buy at the completed scheme. And if they're able to at least come away without taking a massive loss that they're going to end up, in a hole, I think probably people would accept that. But that's not before they'll go and they'll scratch their heads and they'll say, okay, what alternative use can we put in there? Maybe put a shopping centre in there instead, or we'll do this, or we'll do like whatever it is. It's a difficult one. In terms of the rental sector, the RTB and stuff, like I have clients in my coaching business that talk about the RTB just being an absolute like complete mess, like that the creation of problems and just how slow it is. Have you got any, does your report that you put out there, does it point to any sort of obvious issues in the market that have been caused by this?
Well, some landlords are selling because of a negative experience with a tenant and in turn the RTB. It's a difficult job. It's an important body. Before the RTB, it was all landlord's way. They could pretty much act any way they wished. So they're an important body and they are there to protect tenants. They're just so inefficient. And where they're particularly inefficient is when a landlord has a tenant who's not paying rent. And
that's when, I think that's probably one of the reasons why so many landlords decide to get out of the market is that I'm not going through that experience again.
Exactly. And it's very stressful. Like, landlords have mortgages to pay. And in some cases, touch wood, we've only had a handful of cases where tenants stopped paying rent. But on a number of occasions, it took more than a year to get that tenant out. And that's just totally unacceptable.
And you could lose your house and the property. Like the mortgage, you're in arrears for 12 months if you're not careful.
Exactly. And then that tenant can go and do that to someone else. So, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work there to be done. They've improved somewhat. Their online offering has improved. But as I said, there's a view amongst landlords that they're biased towards tenants. And certainly a scenario where a tenant can go a year without paying rent and just abusing their systems, like to the point of, not turning up at a hearing and then it's adjourned. Like, that's crazy.
If you were to give advice to, say, a buyer looking at the market now, what advice would you give to somebody?
Well, first of all, I always say think long term. I think I would say that it really depends on what end of the market they're at. If it's a first time buyer, I would encourage them to buy if they can get the mortgage. I think if you're buying something for €400,000, it's probably still well below the development value of it. So I think I would definitely say think long term. I would just some practical advice when buying a home. I would find out who the next door neighbours are. I would always do a closing inspection. I would always do a survey. If that surveyor recommends you get in an electrician to check the electrics or a plumber to check the plumbing or do a drain survey, do it.
Don't find out after.
Exactly, yeah. It's too late. But I would think long term. And ultimately, if it doesn't feel right, then wait. People trading up, they tend to be thinking long term. And I think increasingly a lot of the buyers I'm dealing with, they know interest rates won't stay as high as they are forever.
There'll be a swing back
exactly,
downwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Owen, best advice you've received in your career to date?
I would say when I was a junior in guns, I was getting impatient. And perhaps there was an element that I thought I knew it all. And my manager at the time kind of sat me down and actually outlined a number of areas he could see improvement. And one of them was, and the job of being an estate agent is like, and you've got to perfect the processes. And he said, do you genuinely think you've perfected these processes? And also, and I use this line all the time, some of my team will know it. He said, Owen, you'll risk being 5 minutes late than being 5 minutes early. And he was right. And so that was probably him sitting me down at that time. I was getting impatient. And he just reminded me that you're doing well, but you've still a lot to learn. And I think, as I mentioned, I was in training for about 3 years, and that definitely stood me in good stead in the end, just perfecting those processes, how to engage with people, how to read people, how to negotiate with people, how to value, how to pitch, how to market. And I think I've been very lucky to work with some fantastic people in the industry, and I learned a little something from all of them. And I'm very grateful. Like, I'm very grateful to Michael Gavigan, very grateful to my time in Guns. So I think for a young person coming into the industry, find a mentor. That mentor needs to take the time. The company you're joining needs to have proper structures in place around training. It can't be just ad hoc. So I think perfecting the processes and just being patient.
Being patient,
because it's a long career. And really, what separates the elite agents in Dublin from the others, and it's the same everywhere, is those who can generate business themselves, can win business themselves, can value accurately, and then can close. And the great thing about the job is I can still, in hindsight, look at a scenario and said I could have managed that better, or walking into a property and literally not having any idea with any real accuracy what it's worth. And so you're learning all the time. You just hope, and I would certainly hope I'm making less mistakes today than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's a real pleasure to have you here today. Can you let people know if they want to? I'm sure a lot of people will know how to find you, but if somebody wanted to find you, what's the best place to go about?
So I'm pretty much active on all the platforms. So on LinkedIn, I'm very active. You'll find me there under Owen Reilly, Owen. You'll find me on TikTok, Owen Reilly. You'll find me on Instagram as well. And my email address is owen@owenreilly.ie.
Owen, thank you very much and best of luck.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via the Facebook group that is called Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, you will find me on social media. My handle is Gavin J. Gallagher. You can stay up to date with all of my content and the various projects I'm working on over on my website, gavinjgallagher.com. And while you're there, please do add your name to the Join My Tribe thing over on the right-hand side. This will ensure you're kept up to date via my weekly newsletter. All of these links are in the show notes below. That's all for now. I will see you guys in the next episode.